Hi Dana.
Hi Charindra.
Hi Riyad.
Hi, Chari.
After a while, no, you're with us, but
Yes.
good to have the two of you. So there's a lot to discuss, lot to analyze,
Lot to digest.
lot to digest. Yeah.
Yeah.
And our thoughts are with everybody who has been affected,
Yeah.
and we hope that this matter will be resolved as soon as possible with the shortest timeline. But just to get initial thoughts on, let's start with what a narrative that is going on on social media mainly about the government dropping, government not allowing this. Government
Dropping the ball, basically.
dropping the ball,
yeah.
right? And this could have been mitigated.
Yeah.
A natural disaster can't be prevented, no.
Yeah.
But the impact could have been minimized.
Mm.
What are your thoughts on that? And one of you can take this, or both.
So if I go
please,
first, I think definitely I would like to go to the framework, Chari. How should we think about it? Definitely, there's a role of the government in any disaster because there's no other way that you can do it. So there's a government's role and there's a community role, and then there's sort of risk assessment sort of a role which comes with markets. The role of the government probably is to invest more and more money to really identify the alert levels, or like whatever the disaster management systems that they have. It could be a Doppler machinery or whatever that thing for any disaster, that you should have that indication, because one thing is it's expensive. The other thing is that no individual will just invest on to monitor the entire weather in Sri Lanka or in the Indian Ocean. So that investment has to be happen. In this case, I really do not know the truth. There are indications that people are claiming that it was mentioned in some of the TV interviews, and some people are quoting some of the BBC weather reports and all that. So I don't know the truth, but definitely we know one thing: the alert system could have been better.
Yeah.
For whatever reasons.
Yeah.
If it could have been indicated before and it could have been communicated to people, and there's also a conversation whether even the communication was done in all three languages. Even if you go to the disaster management website and their Facebook post, social media, whether that communications have been done in all three languages is a separate conversation, because some people who are affected may be speaking Tamil, so as a result they really did not know. But I think overall on that conversation, to be honest, I do not know.
Yeah.
It has to be investigated. But one thing that we know for sure, the alert system could have been better, and also people's awareness. For an example, whether 100 millimeter rainfall is okay, or whether it's 200 is okay, that at least we should know what is the threshold. Okay, if it's going when it's 100, people should. I don't think people really knew whether it's 100 was okay.
So right now what has happened is we got over 300 millimeters.
Absolutely.
And just on the previous point about, I think nobody's disputing the fact that an alert system, the alert system could have been better. We could have detected this a little earlier. I think the point of contention is whether the government could have been more proactive, and now referring to these warnings that were given by an official of the Met Department. I watched that interview. There is nothing conclusive. In fact, at one point, he stopped short of calling it a cyclone. He says that the rainfall could increase with this disturbance that is happening. And he says from the 14th onwards. So there is nothing precise for anyone to act on that 2 weeks in advance or anything. And then if you look at the Met Department forecasts in the days leading up to the cyclone, that red alert was issued only a couple of days before. And before that, it is just purely about rainfall. So I don't know where this narrative is coming from, that the government was notified a couple of weeks or a week in advance. I don't think that's entirely accurate. And then when we push that narrative, what we do is we get lost in that conversation instead of focusing on what we really want to do. So unless you have anything to add, I think we can move on from that topic.
No, that pretty much covers it.
Yeah.
But
So
also, Jari, I think the next thing is, what was the, I mean, okay, let's say whether they identified on 12th or wherever, we don't know. I don't know. But what was the mode of communication on that? Let's say, okay, whether it's a cyclone or whatever that thing, now there has to be some authority to really alert them. It could be either to like informing the government, to whom, like whether there's a disaster management committee, whether it's to the president, or whether, now for an example, in police and tri-forces, they basically come out and say there's a security threat, please do the needful. I mean, that media power was given. And where was it? Like whether they really came out and say, look, red alert, don't go out, people move, whether to what level, and whether the coordination has been happened. From the little that I read, there was a gazette, there's a disaster management act which was enacted after tsunami, so which actually empowers, apparently, where basically you can make all the calls, because at the point of disaster, none other circulars, I mean, you can override on that. So I'm not sure how the mechanism has worked or what is the process, but definitely from the surface, from the little that we can see, definitely the gravity wasn't very clear, and the communication probably between the institutions, it seems there has been some leakages or breakages that probably we have to address, but I think we all know what has happened, probably we'll move forward with rebuilding it than it was before.
Yeah. And I think just a final point on that is that I heard from some quarters that people were told to move and they were staying there because their houses could be robbed, or and these are really human reasons. Correct. So you can't just blame people for not wanting to move when this is on an unprecedented scale.
But one thing, Charlie, that didn't happen because it never came to my phone, at least.
The
thing is,
not in terms of phones. I think. I think they had gone and
they had gone on loudspeakers. That was I think that was right at the end, and I think some news, I think messages and social media and all that, it happened. But normally, I think during the tsunami or after the tsunami, sorry, not after the tsunami, where they had a warning system where there is a cell broadcast. Yeah. I mean, both of us, we work for mobile networks, where they had a system where all the mobile networks, it was sent on a burst. Yeah. Right. So everyone gets that same message warning this particular, and the other one is with the mobile networks, it's very easy because you can geofence. Now, for example, people who are not getting affected, you don't have to create unnecessary panic.
So,
right?
So people in Kandy wouldn't get a tsunami warning.
Exactly, right? So the thing is, and the other thing is, the networks won't get jammed.
Yes.
Because you're sending out, I mean, close to about, some people have multiple 2 or 3 phones with them. So technically, if you take, there's Sri Lanka has 24 million, at least 30 million SIMs must be working at the moment now. Right? Or maybe less, I don't know. But what I'm saying is the network can get jammed. So what they do is when they geofence, it will go particularly to the people that it matters. But to be honest, I didn't get anything on my phone. I just went and checked.
I don't think anybody got anything.
Right? If someone has got and seen it, please do put it on the comments. Right?
I don't think anybody has.
Exactly. So the thing is, I think that was a shortcoming. I think on the administrative
so that's what
side.
I meant by how to communicate.
Yeah.
And on the framework, actually, with all credits to Learn Asia, basically the Professor Rohan Samarjeev and their team had done a lot of work way before from tsunami. So the model that I mentioned was basically what was mentioned in their research papers. The latest thing that you mentioned, like for people to move out, it's as you said. It's a very emotional thing. And also there are valid security, because there have been instances that when people leave, basically, of course, there are threats of theft and all that.
Correct. So the other thing, Dana, is in other countries. So for example, I'm talking about advanced economies, right? Not in our part of the world, where a lot of the houses are insured, right? So what happens is, even if a disaster hits, you know, okay, because in Sri Lanka, as I don't know, we have spoken about this a lot in some of the other podcasts, like two things in life. One thing is a house and a vehicle. It's like two huge benchmarks in life. So that's the reason people are like, one reason is, they're attached, it might get robbed. That it might get robbed, like what you said. Or the other one is, okay, it might happen to someone else, it might not happen to me. Right? So, but the thing is, nobody will take an unnecessary risk if the risk is insured. Right? So, I think that's another one.
Yeah.
Another one we need to kind
absolutely.
of...
So, what they have recommended is you have to have a community mechanism that to ensure that the role of the government is, okay, you move as fast as possible. We will have some community mechanism that your properties, security is insured. So then they are, at least, of course, not everyone will leave, but at least the resistance levels comes down. And the third one is a role of the insurance. Because for an example, at the high risk areas, ideally the insurance premiums has to be quite higher.
Absolutely.
So with that, actually, it's not about the claims after the damage being done. It's about the information system, because then the insurance companies and everyone has to invest more and more to identify the real risk levels. So whether it's a flood risk or whether it's a landslide risk, so then it becomes better, which can save a lot of people, because then they will give the first alert saying, look, move, there's a something is happening, and as insurance providers, they can, it doesn't mean that all properties we are pushing for everyone to get insured. Of course, that could have been ideally the way to think about, but all three has to work hand in hand. The role of the government, and then the community network,
correct,
ensuring the security, so that people is not resistant to leave, and third, the role of the insurance, so then you price the risk accordingly, and then the damage can be to an extent controlled.
Correct.
So that's the long way to, long run, that's the way to think about it. But I think we jumped a bit from response rate to yes.
And just one more little thing that I want to add is, probably if before the crisis, like before everything hit, before there was landfall, if the military was deployed in advance, I think the coordination, because generally the military has a very good system on communication. Because one thing is, what happens is when you hit a disaster, establishing communication, that's the first thing you have to do. Right? So the cell towers were definitely, they were inundated, right? Some were completely washed off, some had collapsed, some ran out of diesel, the generators got flooded, so various things happened. So then you lose the cell connection. But one thing is, if you deploy the military in advance, the military it has its own communication thing, which is not dependent on civilian communication infrastructure. Right? I mean, they run with satellite, they run with shortwave. They have various things like ham radio. They have various things, right? Those Motorola units, right? All that. So I think if that was deployed in advance, I think still things would have been easier. Because one thing is communication, and the other one is the logistics. Because military has its own logistics unit, and plus they have their own engineering unit, right? So if something needs to break or something needs to be fixed, they can do it. So I think that also probably would have had a say right at the end.
So
on the number of deaths.
Saying that the military was deployed too late.
It looks that way, because it looks that way. I mean, normally, if even on the last time, because generally the military, if any country, the military is designed in a way where they can do short deployment.
So another thing related to that is, now the military eventually was deployed, and after it was deployed, another narrative that was going around, and I would particularly like Advocata's view on this, is a lot of people saying, if military budgets had been cut, where would all this coordination, all this manpower come from?
Right.
And therefore stop this narrative of military budget must be cut.
Right.
So Charlie. So I think our stance was the military. The problem was with the how the budget of the military being utilized. So the challenge was the military spending was not targeted and focused enough. So as a result, that we maintained a large army basically prevented us from investing on the things that we should have invested. So even in this case, no one has said there shouldn't be a military. There has to be a military who is very well equipped with the latest technology. So what has happened, I think our strategy had been expanding the the manpower component of it, which has restricted us on having invested on the right type of technology and the equipment. Now, even you look at the unfortunate incident that took place, probably Riyad has a better sense on these helicopters and things like that. But we all know that our
it's all outdated.
It's all outdated. These are like, and I have, Captain Elmo has multiple times mentioned, because this was not the first time. Even because of bad weather, there was another Air Force crash, the helicopter crash took place. So every time, because there are radar systems and things, I'm not the technical person, but there's this technology is quite outdated.
Dana, generally, I think the people's understanding when this argument, and Advocate is not the only organization making this argument, that the military budget is bloated. When people hear that, what they understand is stop funding the military so much. That is not the scientific argument.
No, it's not. So
proponents of this
shall I quickly run through the numbers? Shall I just quickly run through? So the military, this latest budget, 2026 budget, the total defense budget is 407 billion, right? Recurrent is 361. Which is 89% of the budget. So what goes into recurrent, I'll just go through. It's basically the salaries of the soldiers, uniforms, and food and nutrition. So that is 89% of the budget. Capital expenditure is only 11%. So if you're modernizing, you have to spend on capital expenditure. And I'll give you a breakdown on the capital expenditure of the Triforces, like the three individual units. The Navy is 10.5 billion, right? Army is 1.8 billion. Air Force is 16.8 billion. Now, what was critical for this particular disaster is the Air Force, right? Because Air Force does the rescue. Most of the rescue and all that, the Air Force gets very heavily involved during floods and landslides, because all the roads get inundated or gets cut off, and you can only go by air. Now, the choppers or the helicopters that we have, now I remember, I'm not exactly sure about the numbers of what you call helicopters Sri Lankan Air Force has, and I'm not exactly sure how many of them are actually airworthy. Because you can have helicopters, but if they are totally 24/7 grounded, then it's basically the equivalent to zero. So I remember there was a statement where President Anura said that he even gave his two helicopters. So normally presidential helicopters are VIP helicopters. They are not rescue helicopters. Rescue helicopters are completely different equipment, because the reason is the rescue helicopter comes with particular equipment which normal VIP transporters won't have. Like for example, on the door you have a side winch. So normally the cable is sent down, because you can't land a helicopter in a disaster, because you can't land it on water, you can't land it on a roof, and certainly you can't land it on an unstable ground. So normally people are on top of their roofs and all that, and they want the helicopter to come and pick them up. So you can't land it on the roof because the building will collapse. So the only thing what you can do is you have to basically get those specific helicopter which is spec for that particular task, which I don't think we have enough.
So again it comes to that point that what you're arguing for is more capex and less of the recurrent expenditure, but that can only be done, I suppose, Riyad, by cutting down the numbers.
No, so that's the thing. So you need to bring the exact balance, right? So the balance has to be maintained. So what's the point of having a huge standing army, which is technically bigger than the British army, without having the equipment to deploy it? I mean, what's the point of having an army that will just sit inside the camp, where they want to go and do something, they can't do it because they don't have the equipment to do it, right? So that is something you really have to look in, because now if you look at the Air Force budget, right, maintaining Air Force is very expensive, maintaining a Navy is very expensive, right? If you look at the Air Force budget, 16.8 billion, that is less than the loss of what Sri Lankan Airlines made, if I'm not mistaken. I think they allocated 20 billion for Sri Lankan Airlines, a loss-making SOE. So do you understand, money has to be prioritized. If you don't prioritize money, then this is national security.
So Chari, I think definitely our argument has been, it is what we are saying is for the betterment of the military services. Because now even in that there was a incident, that there was a bus accident and these people were on a rooftop, and even a lot of politicians and everyone was asking why a helicopter couldn't be sent and rescue people. Actually, the Air Force provided a clarification on that. That the spokesperson said, we tried the helicopter, but the first type of helicopter that we were used, the thrust was so much to the ground, we were worried that the asbestos, that the roof will collapse.
It might,
and then they checked another helicopter and he provided another technical thing that, okay, then we realized, because there were electrical wires and all that, which we could not take to a lower point, because then it could have been a crash. So then only we realized our fleet really doesn't have an option. So that's why we have to deploy Navy to rescue them. Now, Riyad's point on if there's a rescue, I don't know the technology of it. But that's where ideally what we have to do is definitely you have to spend money on the military, but on the right things. What we basically say is you having a very quite a different structure, which is quite labor heavy, is not helping them.
Only thing, Dana, there is that I think it's a difficult solution.
It's a very difficult solution.
Because to bring down the numbers, now especially after this incident, after people have seen the commitment of the military personnel to rescue and relief, it's going to be a hard sell to say we are cutting down the military in terms of manpower. Because when people talk about it, they are not necessarily talking about on the level that you're talking about in terms of equipment. They are saying they are seeing these soldiers knee deep in water, right, helping out with the rescue. So they are saying it's a more of an emotional argument about, look at how committed they are to saving other people's lives. And they are the ones who are always coming forward to help out.
Correct.
So I think it's going to be a difficult solution because if you don't cut down that budget, if you don't cut down the manpower, the human resources, then that recurrent expenditure is going to be there.
So in some of the other countries, what they do is they have something called the National Guard, right? So the National Guard is there. They are basically civilians who have been trained in military. So when a disaster comes, they are recalled for that particular purpose. So maybe that's another model they can look at. Because if you remember in Hurricane Katrina, what devastated the south coast of the US, where was it? Louisiana, was it? Somewhere there, right? So what happened was the National Guard was deployed. And the National Guard, normally the deployment is done by the president. It's a presidential order. As far as I know, stand to be corrected if I'm wrong.
The National Guard is presidential.
Presidential, right? Yeah. That is probably a model that you can look at. Because the thing is, then you can cut down on the number, because you need the force or you need trained people for this specific task who know how to use the equipment, who have been trained to use the equipment for special needs. That doesn't mean you need them 24/7 for for eternity. So that might be a model, I think, for the government to kind of to see, because currently the existing one doesn't work. No, that is clear, no, right? Because you can't have the cake and eat the cake, right? We don't have the money for it. So if that is the incident, we are looking for alternative options, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can check what other countries are doing when they hit a crisis moment, and then we can follow that particular model and redo the whole setup. That is something that needs to be overhauled. So I think if you kind of work something out like that, I think that is a more plausible option for anyone to take.
Right. So we also have to talk about the impact and the recovery mechanism as well. But when it comes to impact, the closest comparison is not 2016. I think it's maybe 2004. Now, when the president was giving his first address after this happened a couple of days ago, he said something which I found interesting because I don't particularly agree with it. But he said that this is the worst natural disaster we have ever had. Now, I don't know whether it's the stress of the situation or whatever, because in terms of human casualties, this is
much less
not even in the same
ballpark
as same universe as the tsunami. But could he have been talking in terms of infrastructure damage, in terms of impact on the economy, in terms of the scale of the rebuilding that is required? What are your thoughts?
Dhananath, you want to take it? Or
Yeah,
you-
probably here we may have a different view. So my estimation is, I was also surprised when President mentioned that it's like the pretty much the the worst in the history. My estimation is because 2004.
Because he couldn't have forgotten.
Absolutely.
You can't forget the tsunami.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So it was 30 to 35,000 human
Deaths.
deaths. 2016 floods was about 93. About 500,000 people were affected in 2016. And the estimation, there are multiple reports done about 2016. Again, the damage is approximately about, according to that, the 2016 dollar value is about $700 million US dollars. So it says 500 to probably, let's say, $1 billion US dollars. The tsunami in 2004 is estimated to be about $2 billion at that dollar rate. So dollar has depreciated from 2004 to now about 70%. So let's say in today's value, it's about 4 billion, pretty much a loss that we are talking about tsunami, and probably about $1 billion or $1.5 billion from 2016. So my estimation is it's somewhere in between tsunami and definitely higher than the 2016 floods. But in my view, it's lesser than the tsunami impact. But I think the conversation is tsunami was more on the coastal side, but this has pretty much affected pretty much all areas. But even don't forget the 2016 floods, out of 25 districts, 24 were affected. All districts were affected, except I think Monaragala, pretty much everyone was affected. But this time the damages seems to be quite heavy for sure. Yeah, that's in terms of the damage estimation. Will it come later on, like how we should think about the economic impact and all that later on? Maybe Riyad has a different point of view.
Yeah, I'm a little bit slightly pessimistic because the reason is
Pessimism meaning you think that
I think it's greater
this is
than
worse than the tsunami.
I think it's slightly worse than the tsunami for the simple reason the tsunami. In any country, what really hits a country is basically the civil, more than military or anything. It's the civil infrastructure. The civil infrastructure has got devastated in this, right? Bridges are down, tunnels are out, roads are completely washed away, communication is cut off. So if you take, and then hospitals are flooded, so the thing is, if you look at the mass scale of it, the recovery period is going to be huge. The reason is rebuilding the civil infrastructure is going to take a long time. So if you take the cumulative value of the time that is lost and all that, this is greater. All right, because and the other one is the number of, more than the deaths and all that, the number of houses that have been destroyed. So their livelihoods have gone. So what do they do with that? Then the access roads are gone, because as you know, in any economy, what keeps the lubricant of the economy is accessibility. Accessibility is gone. I mean, there are still cases where people are saying we can't go to this particular area. The parts of Hatton, parts of the hill capital, where people, complete accessibility is gone. So how long is it going to take to fix that? And the other one is fixing that infrastructure. You can't just fix it thinking, okay, it's broken, we can fix it. No, because the thing is, it has been broken due to a particular reason where it has not been planned or anything like that, right? So the thing is, then they'll have to go and do a geo survey, check the new routes, clear everything out, do soil testing, all that, and then that's going to take time. So the problem with this is it's time. This infrastructure building is going to take a much longer time than the tsunami, right? That's the argument I'm having.
Yeah.
Because tsunami is mostly coastal. It was hotels, and those hotels are privately owned.
Yeah, and one thing maybe that I could say to support your argument is that infrastructure itself was not as developed as it is today.
Yeah.
And therefore, the higher you go, the harder you fall, right?
Yeah.
So maybe on that scale, there could be a comparison.
Yeah.
But I actually never thought that in terms of the actual rebuilding efforts scale of that this could be on par with the tsunami.
Yeah.
Just because I think we focus so much on the human casualties.
Yeah. So the thing is, with the tsunami, the only industries per se that got hit was, for a very short time, it was the fisheries industry. Then they got up and running. Then the hotels took a while to rebuild, right? But the problem with this is there's a lot of private businesses and all that are completely shut down. right? So only thing is the only upside I see in this, for example, okay, beyond that is other one is like if you take the vegetation and all, like for example the what do you call the vegetable farms and all that,
Yeah.
severely impacted, right? So that's going to take a while, right?
No, even on tourism, Riyadh, because the tourism industry wasn't galloping along like it is now.
Yeah.
Then again, the impact is less because you have less cancellations because there weren't so many cancellations to start
Exactly.
with. So like that, I suppose.
The only upside, one of the very few upsides that I see is the civilian infrastructure. The technology of the world has improved a lot. So if they kind of speak to the right people, to the right agencies, to the right companies and all, then get them involved, they will probably, we live in a world of, 3D printing and prefab. Right, certain things will be built much faster than when they were traditionally done maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago. So that is one upside I'm saying. For that, of course, the government has to have a very well coordinated plan. They need to have the right people with the right backgrounds and all handling it. If that happens, then the recovery is going to be relatively much faster.
Yeah.
It all depends on what the government does.
So on that, now a rebuilding committee has been appointed called Rebuild Sri Lanka, right? And that committee, I think, has come in for criticism on social media for one being too business oriented because it has a lot of business leaders, and then also for not having any female representation.
Okay.
Let's take the business one.
Okay. I have a bigger problem on the selection. I have a bigger problem, but I'll come to that.
Okay, so you can add that also as a concern, but a lot of people had that concern of why is it filled with business leaders and how are they going to help? Is it just I'm a little unclear on that also in terms of what this committee's mandate is. Is it about getting the funding, getting aid, and ensuring that it is transmitted transparently, or is it bigger than that in terms of planning the rebuilding? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm also not sure about the mandate, but I think it's the right move. I mean, as a concept, it's the right move. We have appointed a committee who probably can, because I think from what I understood, it's understandable that only the government cannot basically bear the bill. So we are trying to attract as much as funds as much as possible. And you need a set of credible set of people. I'm not going to question about the credibility or anything, but you should have like a private sector led sort of a thing to attract. But definitely appointing, a female representation should have been there, and probably you could have thought. So I'm not sure. My understanding is this is more the sort of a governance committee on the fund only.
Yeah.
It is not about like which bridge that we are going to do, what's technology, right? So it's about mainly you have to attract funds.
Yeah.
So this is all about collecting cash. So then probably the corporates can, those who have deep pockets can contribute, and that sets the tone. You have the international network, something in that sort. But definitely have a foreign mission, the engineers, the health sector, everyone has to come separately on providing the solutions. I don't think this was under any means appointed to completely rebuild the thing. It is basically has to have a better, definitely the community stakeholders has to be there. My understanding, it's purely on collecting money and bringing the cash in and making sure with what we learned from tsunami and all that, the funds being properly pretty much utilized. And ideally there could have been a lawyer or like a auditor general representation, probably some chartered accountants, like there are professional groups. So then that could have been, I think, ideally better on the governance.
And then now looking at this particular case, I think the most important person is actually a engineer, and in particularly a civil engineer who specializes in structural engineering. Okay, that's what you need, because bridges have been washed away.
But then Dana's point, and I think maybe I am also on the same view, that this is not to decide how the rebuilding works in practice. This is probably this is probably just to get the funds in, because you need the contacts of these people, both locally and internationally, to create that sense of assurance that this money will be utilized properly, and maybe they can also pull more money than if they were not in the committee. Just having these faces plastered on the banner would get more inflows.
Absolutely. But I think, yes, that is one side, but also there's a foreign, Ministry of Foreign Affairs has a massive role, Charlie, because while I still have a disagreement on whether it's tsunami, but in case, if it's tsunami, we are in a worse situation. If the impact is higher than tsunami, because the problem is, after tsunami, you saw donations and support was you really could not control.
Actually, Dana, you are 100% right. The rupee actually appreciated.
Absolutely. From 104% to I think about 104 rupees to about 99, it was appreciated. But now, and also our focus was diverted. Like Indonesia got affected, Thailand got affected. So we have to have a better story to basically attract funds. And to have I'm not saying doing a campaign, but to basically bring our case, saying that we need support and why we need support. That story has to be stronger.
You know, 2004 is one of the few times, maybe it has happened with the Easter attacks also, but 2004 was the only time I saw, or the first time I saw, we were the lead story on CNN for a couple of days, and they based, because BBC went to Thailand, CNN was here, so we went to a whole audience around the world because they based their coverage from Sri Lanka.
Correct. And one more thing is, now the age of communication has changed. I'm talking about, so now we live in the world of social media and all that. And what really pushed tourism along in Sri Lanka, this is my opinion, my personal opinion, is basically the YouTubers. There are so many YouTubers. If you just go on YouTube, amount of videos that have been done, that I think has propelled Sri Lankan tourism to a next level. Because, because most of the guys because I watched a few of their videos, and most of the guys are like, this is like a really cool place to come. It's a very clean city. It's a very kind of safe city, safe country to be in and all that. So if the people who are in charge are smart, they should reach out to these YouTubers to come and tell the other side of the story, what has happened with the disaster. Because I think that will kind of soft power or soft influence might go a long distance, right? For things like, for example, if the government is thinking on something like, I'm just putting it out, things like crowdfunding and things like that. And plus, even there, when those stories start coming out on social media, even those governments, they try to get a kind of a soft spot. I think that has to be something we have to really look into, because we are living in the new age of YouTube and YouTubers and podcasts. So
and also this case, I think the funding strategy has to be different, because on tsunami, 35,000 death toll is massive, and it's mostly about building the houses and all that in that area. Now here you should also, it's damaging. Sometimes people don't see the cleaning an existing house also takes a lot of financial resources and furnishing and all that, which people may not say, because everyone politically it's more favorable, have a higher appetite. You build a house, you build a massive sort of a village with houses. That's how the funds basically came during tsunami. And we should not forget there was a war during 2004, and pretty much 2/3.
There was a peace process, but it was interwar.
Absolutely, and also the north and east were pretty much not part of our economy by then. It was part, but it wasn't very well connected. So we have to look at, in that case, very seriously on this, because we are collecting money to build bridges and roads and things like that, which may not be very visible, like helping someone, someone with a damage or loss of property for an individual. So our strategy has to be different, but it's important that we capitalize it faster. Even I was thinking going to asking another debt relief or something that has to happen now, because after 1 month people will forget it, and there will be some crisis again, some part of the other part of the world, and things move on, and then at that point we may be late. So while the mind is fresh,
absolutely right,
I think we have to ask for the relief and move fast on that process without waiting till the last minute.
So right, I heard the president say that we cannot handle this on our own, we need the aid. I hope with that same sentiment, the government can make the case for some sort of debt relief, which we may or may not need actually, but we can use this as an opportunity, to get that kind of relief, saying that we are in deep strife.
And also we should not forget, I'm sure that most of you have seen that news. Now India has cleared their airspace to Pakistan to basically provide relief for Sri Lanka. They have cleared it on an urgent basis. So this is a serious measure by India, knowing what is going there. So that shows the gravity of it. So we have to pretty much capitalize, that indicates. So then, basically work around
and that shows that we are like the Switzerland of South Asia. We don't really have enemies. Even the enemies just put their differences aside when we are in trouble.
So that's the thing, Shari. Again, coming back, you have a huge standing army. Fight against who? So this is the question, right? We don't have any direct conflict with anyone. We don't have any conflict. We don't, not direct or indirect. We don't have any issue with anyone in the region, right? India is good with us. Pakistan is good with us. China is good with us. Bangladesh is good with us. Maldives is good with us, right? So the thing is, then you have to basically make the maximum use of the capital what you have. So putting that to the military, fine. There's no problem. But the thing is, it has to be used in a productive way. To make it productive, you need the equipment. Again, I'm going back to that. So that balance has to come. So that's why. So they have to look at a completely new model.
Right. Then finally, I want to get into this. So we have the funding. Assume we get the funding. Then what do we do with that funding? And we'll obviously have to use some of our resources as well. I don't particularly want to see them build it back exactly the way it was.
Exactly.
We have to use this as an opportunity to build back better. And if that means that every crisis is an opportunity.
Absolutely.
Are we going to use this as an opportunity for us to have a more planned living environment? Planned building culture. Because at the moment, I don't see that. Now, after the tsunami, you remember this buffer zone that came in? That lasted maybe a year or two.
And then they started creeping back in.
But slowly.
But
right?
contrary to that, actually the tsunami still, because I know some people from Ratmalan area, those drills and things are still taking place.
Drills are taking place.
Alerts and all. I'm sure people have probably that buffer zone, they invaded all that. But I think there's some level of, after now it's about 20 years now, so there's some level of training that is taking place if there's a tsunami, how to react. But of course we learned that lesson after a massive disruption. But absolutely, you're spot on. We have to build it better with what we experience, because when the power failed, of course the ATMs, the connectivity, everything failed.
Civil infrastructure.
Because I don't understand why there is so much residential development in the hill country which are prone to landslides.
So Chari, I'll just go into this. So normally in any country, when you are actually expanding your city, right? If you go back 200 years, a lot of things would have been just done ad hoc, right? That's how things were. But the thing is, in any other country, when the city is expanding and expanding rapidly, especially in vulnerable places, there's something called town planning, right? In Sri Lanka, there's nothing exists called town planning. And the only university that teaches town planning is Motu University. That's the only university. We have so many universities in the country. It's the only university, or there's a department for, I'm not sure. I think it's under civil engineering. I'm not 100% sure on that. But that's the only university that teaches town planning. How many town planners do we have? Right? That is number one. Do we actually use town planning? Because if you go to any city, when you go overseas, everything is very structured. Roads are structured. They have a ratio for everything, right? So many residents per hospital or something. So here, everything is just ad hocly, it's done, And when that happens, you get disasters, right?
So there's a national physical plan. I don't know whether that's in effect. But there's a national physical plan for 2030 and a national physical plan for 2050. Now, I don't know how much of that has been implemented, but that means there has been some thought put into it. So I am saying, is this an opportunity for us to, and not just city planning, Riyad. I'm saying overall, even the suburbs, right?
So suburbs, everything, it falls on a town planning.
Town planning, right? So just so people don't understand it as just
it's not only the city,
town, right?
You're exactly right. It's not only the city. It's the city, the suburbs, the surroundings, the wetlands, everything comes into play.
Exactly, because they all work hand in hand.
Exactly.
Right? So and because the connecting roads play a big part. So, for example, I don't understand, as I said before, why there is so much residential construction in areas which are prone to landslides.
Yeah.
Because they get affected almost every year.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't feel it over here,
Yeah.
but they get affected almost every year.
absolutely.
So why?
And I think that's one reason even these people, I think Minister Bimal Ratnayaka went and said, like, I think people said they are somewhat used to floods.
Yeah.
But I think no one expected it
something
to
like
be
to this scale.
This
Yeah.
scale. So they have their mechanism,
Yeah.
but that's
Yeah.
the problem.
Yeah.
So that's where definitely we have to think. That's why, Chari, the need for reform that's we have been advocating now is becoming more and more significant, because without doing that basic bottlenecks, we are getting to the same trap. Because the property rights issue has to be sorted. The cost of construction issue has to be sorted. Now, how are we otherwise going to rebuild it? And then our government, limiting the size of the government has to be there, because otherwise how are we going to invest on these all high-tech ones? So it ultimately boils down to fundamental. This is not a muscle power game. I think what we are stretching at the moment is absolutely the generosity and the kindness of Sri Lankans and their muscle power.
Yeah.
People are carrying stuff, we are collecting, even Advocata is doing stuff.
Yeah.
You know, everyone is doing whatever which is possible by cutting down our consumption. Even I saw the prisoners, they have said they will donate their one day or one meal to which is worth of 500,000. So they have basically staying in hunger to send relief items to this affected area. So everyone is stretching their generosity and muscle power to overcome, but that is not enough to rebuild. And we should not forget that this can happen. The preparation for the next natural disaster actually should have started yesterday, because by the time while we are recovering, there's a higher chance that another one will hit. 2015 there was one scam, 16 flood, 17 drought, 18 constitutional coup, 19 Easter attacks, 20 COVID, 21 COVID, 22 economic crisis. So pretty much for 8 years we had back-to-back crises. Only 2023 and 2024 until 11 months we had a pretty much
a decent run.
Normal
and now
run.
again it has disrupted. So we have to keep that in mind. And in terms of a lot of people are asking about exchange rate and impact. So definitely in my view, tourism can recover faster. Probably it will take 2-3 months, but I think it will, but unfortunate, we are just starting the season. So we will lose that seasonal advantage.
Yeah.
We have to check how many cancellations takes place.
Correct.
But probably since down south is less affected, it can work.
I don't know how many cancellations the numbers will come in. But I feel like, because this is one of those incidents where it ends in about 3 days or 4 days, apart from the relief efforts and all of that. But for tourists, I don't know how many cancelled who had booked for the second half of December. I don't know. Okay, so the numbers will come in, but I don't really see any reason for them to cancel. And especially the state of emergency will probably be lifted by then. So I don't really see a reason for that, unlike the Easter attacks, where Easter Sunday attacks, where there was a state of panic.
Correct.
And all of that.
So the thing is, as what Dhananath said, the southern coast is fine. So the tourism activities and all that, people who come for the sun, surf and the beach and all that, so I think they'll be okay. But then again, you will get some of these budget tourists who come and then they want to do that whole Ella run and go to the eastern province. I think that might get impacted. But still, the people who are looking for the sun and the surf, I think they'll be here.
So then the next thing is on the forex. So some of the export industries will also have affected, because the colony that the beer gummer, that's the industrial area to an extent, and the tea and everything and the supply chains will get disrupted. The food prices will go up already. I mean, it has gone up. It's already up.
Carrot is 4,000 rupees a kilo.
And already the poultry industry has affected. So pretty much the cost of living will go up. What the government could do is not the popular solution, but don't impose price controls to begin with, because that will worsen the situation. Understand carrot is not worth of 4,000 rupees a kilo, but at least there are cost factors. I'm sure the traders are also keeping higher margins, because in a crisis situation, your mentality shifts that you accumulate as much as possible. But the thing is, it's important at least to have availability of food items in this situation. Number one. Number two, we had to cut down the lot of tariffs on like onions, potatoes, whatever that the food items, tin fish
Absolutely.
and everything that we import as a solution.
And particularly import bans.
Absolutely no import bans, and then on the medium term we have to cut down the cost of the construction. Definitely,
absolutely.
Because rebuilding not only for this civil infrastructure but people who have lost their
houses
damage, cleaning and everything has to be done, and also probably a more targeted effort from the foreign affairs on basically getting the grants and exchange rate. And also the one thing the government should not do is to cut down the interest rates artificially. Because now the good thing is, at least for the first 11 months we had good revenue collection, so at least we have some level of cash flow that we can spend in this disaster situation. So I hope the government will not bring the interest rates artificially down, because that will create another crisis after about 8 months to 10 months. So we should not do that. But definitely there has to be relief programs, and probably how the banking sector should react to it on small and medium enterprises or moratoriums and all that. It's a separate conversation.
Just a side question on that. Now the budget for 2026 has not accounted for this at all, and is going to be passed on the 5th. Do you think there was a...
Absolutely. That was my other comment. It was about definitely the budget now has to be real. Anyway, in our budget, it's mainly recurrent expenditure and interest payments. But whatever the capital expenditure, probably like this importation of cabs and all that, probably now we have to repurpose that money, or even the other high-scale infrastructure projects and feasibility studies. Probably that money has to be channeled for these rebuilding exercise.
Absolutely.
And from what I saw was they estimate about 30 billion on this infrastructure, which I don't think is adequate. It requires more, probably for the civil infrastructure, but my view is it has to be more than that. And I think the government has taken the right decision. They have given the World Bank a study to estimate the damage. I think with that, probably we will untap some of the crisis funds in UN and different other donor agencies, because this has to be big money, Chari. Your 25,000, my 50,000, whatever that we contribute it's helping, but we are talking about a massive cash requirement. While it is helpful, and this has attempted the foreigner, the diaspora sending, all that is good, but it has never been adequate. Even during the crisis and even before that, we opened for Sri Lankans to send, it probably collect less than $100 million US. So that has to, that attempt has to be there. Definitely the budget has to be revised and repurpose the funds for the purpose of rebuilding it.
I find it strange that they're going ahead with the budget, but I suppose there may be certain challenges there. So it'll be approved passed on the 5th without anything to do with the current situation, which will also, as we all agree, it will spill over into 2026, at least the first quarter.
Absolutely.
So quite interesting. I think we'll wind up there. Thank you, Dana, for joining, and thank you, Riyad, for joining. Especially good to see you after a while. Just wish it was in better circumstances.
Absolutely.
But I think that's about it, and we again wish that everybody who's suffering gets relief, and we are all doing our part in whatever small way we can.
We can.
All right, guys, see you next week.
See you next
Cheers.
week, guys.
Bye bye.